Hi, Kathy. Oh my God, you look
Hi.
gorgeous.
Well, it's Sunday morning. Maybe I'm just feeling blessed today or something.
Oh, you look wonderful. And I see you have the bling on. And you,
Well, I've kind of gone Bollywood, and of course, I have on my mandatory Pulpwood Queen tiara. And this was a gift from one of my friends that she bought in the Parisian flea market. It's
it's
an opera
be
tiara.
oh, it's gorgeous. And I have my tiara, but it doesn't quite work
Work
with
with
the
the head.
headphones.
That's
So
exactly.
I do have it beside me. I want to, I know a little bit about you, and I know that you are Kathy L. Murphy, the Pulpwood Queen. Tell me how you reached the point where you became the pulpwood queen.
Well, it's not anything that I planned. My whole life has been a series of just survival. Of when one thing didn't work, I had to try something else. So I was a book publisher's rep, and I lost my job because the big box stores came in and started closing the independents. In the territory I was in, where all the stores were being closed. So I ended up opening the only hair salon bookstore in the country. This was January 18th of 2000. And shortly after I opened my hair salon bookstore, because I'm a hairdresser, that's how I put myself through college, I had the local book club invite me to join their book club meeting. And I thought they were inviting me to be a member. But I found out at the end of the meeting, they were only inviting me to be a guest. And when I said, "What are we going to read next week?" the hostess jumps up, pulled me out into the galley of her beautiful plantation home, and she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And she's whispering, she goes, "I think you misunderstood. We can only have 8 in our book club because that's all that fits around the table. So we just invite you as a guest." And she goes, "Unless somebody dies or moves away," she goes, "I'm sorry. I hope you understand." I said, I was really kind of in shock. So when I went back in the room, nobody make eye contact. So I made this excuse. I had to pick up my kids from school and I left. And as I was leaving, I thought, who made up that rule? There could only be 8 in a book club. And it's kind of one of those things that you think you're invited into something and you're actually being blackballed. And I thought, that's not right. I'm going to start my own book club, and we're going to be an inclusive book club. We're going to welcome everybody, regardless of race, color, religion, economic background, whatever, whoever wants to join can join. And we're going to wear the crown, which I have on, because we're beautiful within because we're readers. And it's so important to know that, don't we all deserve to wear the crown? I mean, we all have worked so hard in everything we do. And I thought this will be a wonderful way for me to discuss books with people, that something I always wanted to do. When I was on the road, I couldn't do it. So I started my own book club. And I think at first everybody really thought it was a joke. I ran an ad in the paper, and 6 women showed up. And I didn't know any of them. And they were well educated women, librarians, world travelers. And they just came out of curiosity thinking, what would a hairdresser know about running a book club? But they did not know that I ran out of money after my first 2 years of school. I had 2 sisters starting. So I had gone to a beauty school with a friend to get so she could get a haircut. And back then, minimum wage was like $1.19. And I thought, I'm never going to get through school if I get a minimum wage job. I'll work all this summer to raise money to go to beauty school. And I did it because I thought hair is an art form. And it still is to me. I mean, it's creating beauty. And that's what I'm trying to put out into the world, the beauty of reading, and letting everybody know that by reading, we are creating ourselves to be more beautiful from the inside. We have more empathy, more kindness, and more understanding of a greater world than just the small world we may live in. So that's where it all began, Lovelace. And it was a very simple place. And it was just me trying to show, um, go against the status quo, that I didn't even want to be in their book club after I learned that they just only let 8 people in. And I thought, well, how did I come to that meeting? you know? Yeah, I always ask the questions. Yeah.
Let's talk about your beauty shop and bookstore
Mhm.
because it was Beauty and the Book.
Beauty in the Book. And that name was given to me by I was on the board of the Mid South Children's Booksellers, and my friend Jennifer Anglin, who owned the children's bookstore in Dallas, I said, "What should I name my store, Jennifer?" It's a hair salon bookstore. I mean, people go, "Which came first?" And I go, "They were opened at the same time." She goes, "Well, Beauty and the Book." And it's funny, through the years, people have called it a lot of different things. Booty and the Book, Beauty and the Beast. I mean, I get these checks with the Beauty by the Book. I mean, people always get it wrong. And it's just simple. It's a beauty shop bookstore, Beauty and the Book. And I ran it for 13 years.
And
13 years.
I think that's probably when we first met. And I
Mhm.
really don't know how, possibly through Joyce Dixon, who had the Southern Porch.
Yes.
Um,
Could
and
it be?
it's
Could be.
possible. But I wanted to go from the tiara wearing book sharing, and I'm going to
Guide to Life. Yeah. That book,
guide to life.
I'm one of these people just happened to be at the right place at the right time, because when I opened, within a relatively small amount of time, I got a call from the Oprah Winfrey Organization, and they wanted to come and do a show called Dallas Style and feature me. And because they thought it was clever to do a beauty shop bookstore, because what do women do in the shop when they're waiting for their hair to process, or, back in the day, sitting under the dryer? They read. And so they came and did a show. And it was so funny because I was on the show with this little unknown singing sensation, and her name was Beyonce. I think she's gotten a lot further than me, but that first story went on to being featured on Good Morning America and Newsweek, Time, Wall Street Journal. I had Los Angeles Time reporter come and follow me around to a week because I kept starting more chapters as we grew. We went from like 7, 8 people almost overnight to over 100. And then we started opening other chapters in the surrounding Arklatex. And so when she came, I had 12, and Mary McNamara was her name, and she ran a story in the Sunday edition of the Los Angeles Times, their entertainment calendar, and I made the front page and a full centerfold, and it was called The Tastemaker. And I got over 1,000 calls in 2 days from every author, producer, Hollywood insider, wanting to know who I was, and then it just stopped, just like that. But it's been like that ever since I started, and I'm in the 21st year. Can you believe that? 20.
In-
But the book was written because all this happened. I got a call from a small publisher, and they said, "We want you to write the story of your first year." We've never heard of anybody having this kind of notoriety in the media. Yeah, it was just like a sensation. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I've always wanted to be a writer, but I thought it would be a novel." And they said, "No, no, we want the story of your first year." And so as I was writing it, I had an author in that I met her publisher at Mid South Booksellers Convention in New Orleans, and she was in my shop, and she said, "Kathy," she goes, "I'm so excited to be here." Her book was called Making Waves, and it was about a woman who inherited her aunt's hair salon home. And I said, "Oh, it's perfect for my book club." And she said, "I just married a New York Times bestselling author." I said, "Oh my gosh, really?" Because I didn't know her. And she said, "Yes. Do you by any chance know Pat Conroy?" I said, "Do I know Pat Conroy?" "Yes, I do." I go, I love his books. In fact, Marley Rusoff, who was with Bantam Doubleday Dell, actually through her and my rep, I got to meet him in person in Dallas. And she goes, "Marley Rusoff is now an agent. She's my agent and Pat's agent." And she goes, "You should write a book." And I go, "Well, I am." And the next thing I knew, Marley called me and she said, "Don't sign that contract. Let's take you to New York." I mean, who has this kind of stuff happen, you know? So I said, really? She goes, yeah, let's do a query and let's pitch it. And I went to Book Expo and we went around and we had all these people bidding on it, on my story. And she's the one that came up with the Pulpwood Queens tiara wearing book sharing guide to life. And I remember when she told me what we would call it, a guide to life, I just taken a drink of coffee and I just spit it all across my laptop because I said, oh my gosh, Marley, no, everything I've learned has been through a series of unfortunate events. And she goes, who the better to tell the story than you? You're so inspiring. You always, you find a way. And it's always through the love of books. So that's how that
Kathy,
book got
I
published by
just
Grand Central Publishing.
I just want to say you have the who's who of book blurbs. Pat Conroy on the back cover, and I
Yeah,
know he adored you.
yes.
And James Patterson, you won an
Yeah.
award. I
I
mean,
won
these are
the James Patterson a Page Turner Award. Yes, he's lovely. We're actually now public. We were published by the same person, so I got to meet him at the Grand Central launch party at Grand Central Station, and that was a big thrill. And but I've always said it was a thrill to win that award. But what was even better for me was I won the award at the same time as Dolly Parton. And she's always been one of my heroes, sheroes, I should say. So to win it alongside of somebody like that, that really made it for me because, and like being in that newspaper, that Oprah show with Beyonce. I mean, I can't believe I'm like the Forrest Gump of publishing. I get to be at the craziest places with the most amazing people. Yeah.
you, you do. And let's circle back just for a minute to what you said about failure and success. Failure
Yeah.
and how do all of these pieces, all of the things that I've seen you go through, that I know that you've gone
I've
through
been through a lot. Yeah, a lot.
a a
Keep
lot.
going through it.
Well, and yes, and let's how do they all fit together? How
Well,
would you?
first of all, you never learn anything if you only have successes. I mean, the only way you're ever going to learn is to fail because you learned that didn't work. Only I had a really fabulous hairstylist cut my hair one time at a show. And I was telling the story. He said, have you ever had any mistakes in coloring? I go, all the time. He goes, that's how you learn. And he goes, only we don't call them mistakes. You change the word to discover. I discovered that didn't work. It's discoveries. So now I say, well, I learned that did not work. I discovered a better way. It sounds so much better than I've made mistakes all my life. I've made discoveries all my life.
I love
And
it.
I've used that ever since. But you cannot ever become truly successful without working very, very hard and making a lot of discoveries.
I agree entirely. Been there,
Yeah.
done that.
Yep.
I was thinking back. I know you interviewed Fannie Flagg at one time,
Yes. Yes. I
and
had a talk show called The Beauty in the Book Show that was sponsored by Random House. And I interviewed 13 authors under the Random House umbrella. And we were trying to pitch it to go to a television series. And this was well before Netflix or anything. We were kind of ahead of our time. So the television people weren't interested in a talk show about a book club. The cable shows weren't interested. So they decided they'd post it online. And you know, those crazy shows are being watched more now on YouTube than they were when they came out. But everybody from Yan Martell, Anna Quinlan, Pat Conroy, Fannie Flagg, Helen Simonson, Deborah Rodriguez. I did 13 authors, Karen Abbott. It was really wonderful. And I just talked about um, my passion in reading and what their story was. And so I'm actually going to be relaunching. I'm going to start it again because now everybody's going, and I'm going to have my own Kathy L. Murphy YouTube show on my channel. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up. That's
That
coming
is
up.
very, very exciting. I've watched you multitask like nobody's business. First of all, I know I've heard you talk about your theater background. Every video call, we are in like a set, a theater set. You've got set design. You're dressed up, dressed to the nines, and it's just fabulous. When I attended the 2020 Girlfriends Weekend, and we'll talk about that because I want to hear more. I've never seen anything like it.
You
Every
have to
single
come. You have to come. You cannot describe it to people. It's one of those things you have to go.
talk about tell let's tell everyone what, give the title of it, and tell us about it. I know what it is.
Well, after the first year, I had all these authors. They started calling me and wanting to come, and I thought at the end of the year I'll have a party. And my first salon was attached to my garage of my house out in the woods. So we set up tents, and I had 25. It was Texas authors come in, and I had Bob Phillips of the Texas Country Reporter, and I had a lot of really wonderful, famous Texas authors, and I think we had just about as many people show up as we had authors, but it grew. And after 3 years, we moved into a convention center, and we just had our 21st uh, in January, but we did it virtual and online this year. And I invite in all the pulpit queens, I invite in all the authors, and our 2022, it's going to be virtual and online again because of COVID. We're not ready to open up convention centers yet, but we're going to have it a week long with over 100 authors. It's going to be, and we've got some big plans for some really exciting new things to add, because now that we figured out how to do it online, now I know how I can really make it my own. So stay tuned.
I, I don't know that there's anything you haven't made your own that I've seen you do,
Well,
Kathy.
I'd like to play dress up. And obviously, you can't see me, but I have one of my art inspired. I'm also an artist. I went back to college when I was 59, and I finally got my degree after 7 universities, 43 years later, graduated from the University of Texas with my BFA. That was my main goal in life, was to be an artist. But I always had my nose stuck in a book, and it's the reading and books that got me there. And so I have on one of my art inspired kimonos, and I have on a very Bollywood like necklace that I got from one of my friends' boutique. And of course, I'm always changing my hair color and hairstyles and everything, because I see it as an art form. It's just basically another way of creating art, whether fashion, clothes. You could see the background of my house. It's a moving gallery. I've just been spring cleaning, and I've got paintings all around me. And I'm going to be doing a virtual tour coming up, just to show everybody what I live in, because people, they come here and they can't believe it, because it's like, somebody told me it's like a jewelry box exploded, you know, meets Moulin Rouge or something. And I go, I just surround myself with what I want to see. And this is beautiful to me. I love color. I love people and cultures. And so I always wear different costumes, and I'm fascinated. And my book club that I started has always been diverse and global. We've picked books from around the world, and I've always armchair traveled and traveled to as many places as I could, because after I read the books, I wanted to go there. So I'm really excited to be here today, because India is my number one bucket list place to go, because I fell into the um, during COVID, I had seen every movie. I'm also a movie buff. I'd seen every movie ever made. So I started watching these Bollywood films, and I have, talk about storytelling, talk about art and color and dance and theater and over the top. And they're so happy. Now I'm watching a lot of other Indian films that touches upon some really incredible social issues that I just think everybody in the world should see. So I'm so excited you started this podcast because we really need this. We really need to become more globally aware, more diverse, and once we see what other places are like, we're going to find out we may have look different, we may dress differently, but we all have the same basic wants and needs. We all want to be loved and to love others.
And
And
everyone has a
so
dream.
everybody has a dream. And it's our job to be in service to others to help everybody go for their dreams. That, and dream big. That's what I've always said. I mean, our theme for next year is, I have a dream too, because we want we want everybody to be on the same page that if you read, you have been given the basic tools to educate yourself. And if you can't read, you are handicapped for life. So we need to promote literacy efforts like the Pat Conroy Literary Center. Um, these are so important, and volunteer to read in libraries and schools, and help children and do read alouds and read to our own children. These are all very important and something that I practice what I preach. I do.
You certainly do. And I want to let's go back to Bollywood films because you've
Yeah.
told me you are a very social person.
Yes.
You seem to like to live in the woods. Now you
I
could
love I love living in nature because I was an outdoor girl. I really thought when I was a little kid, I really acted out. My sisters and I would act out our storybooks like the Little Rascals did. We watch the Little Rascals and we go, well, let's act out, Treasure Island, or Little House on the Prairie, or my favorite was Tarzan, because I didn't want to be Jane. I wanted to be Tarzan. I wanted to swing through the jungle, wear animal skins, and have, a pet monkey and a cheetah running with me. In fact, I don't know if you've seen it, but I've got my stuffed tiger here. I've got all these giant stuffed big cats because I've always had a love for animals, and I've got three little cats, rescue cats in the house, but I've had everything from squirrels, hermit crabs, turtles. My kids were bringing lizards. We're a big animal loving family.
I
So
know
we
I want
all live in the world together. So that's important.
and the name of the place where you live and what you're going through right now. Let's talk about that, Kathy.
Well, I went through a divorce. It's going on, it'll be 8 years this fall. And in the divorce in Texas, since I opened my shop, uh, after I'd been married, I had to sell it, and it had to be divided. And I had to sell my home. I had to move. And so both my children were in the University of Texas in Tyler. So I decided to move. I got a job as a youth director, and I've always been a youth director at my church. And I got a job at the youth director here in Hawkins, Texas. And so I found a little cabin in the woods outside of Hawkins. It's a gated community, and I feel very safe. It's very small, but it's got everything I need. And I've been here 8 years and I love it. And it's the perfect place if you're an artist, or you need it quiet to do Zoom meetings, or work on your art. I have converted my carport into an all glass art studio, and it's called Murphy's Law, because Murphy's Law, the old adage that, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. Well, that has just followed me. And, I say that, but I've had just as many great things happen. But this year has been pretty devastating because we had an ice storm, unprecedented since the 1960s, hit, and it burst all the pipes in my cabin, ruined my roofs, peeled the paneling on the side of my house, tore up my brand new camper trailer. And navigating insurance companies, I wouldn't wish it. My grandfather used to always say, you never have to worry about going to heaven and hell when you die, because they're both here on earth. And I believe it, because what I've gone through with these insurance companies, I have shingles sitting in my driveway, and this happened in February and it's April. I'm still waiting for the roofer to show up, but I'm in the queue. There were 78 people behind me to get all their plumbing replumbed. And I got that done. So I went 3.5 weeks without water. running water. I had to melt snow to bathe and flush toilets. I didn't have any heating and air conditioning because the motherboard went out on my unit and they couldn't get the part. I know what it's like to live in the 1800s, man, because I couldn't go anywhere, couldn't get out of my driveway. It was too thick with snow and ice. And I learned how to live, just off of what I had on hand.
You,
Former Girl Scout, be prepared.
you are the unsinkable Molly Brown. I've never seen
Maybe,
anyone
maybe.
adapt with so much aplomb, with so much just joy, the joie de vivre. Kath,
Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I admire you so much for what
Oh.
you do and what you
Well,
bring
I'm
to
not,
the
I'm a
table.
flawed individual. I cry, I pout, I scream. You're just seeing the good me, but it has been very difficult. And then I found out after the girlfriend weekend you came to, I got really sick and I found out I had full blown diabetes. So I've been dealing with that too. And that has changed my entire lifestyle because I live on plant-based foods. I do not have any dairy, bread, sugar. Um, all the good things in life are behind me. Now it's, my one treat is coffee. Black, no, nothing in it, just black coffee. If they take that away from me, just take me from this world because if I don't have my
Well,
Lavazza Italian crema coffee that Johnny Bernhard got me, she's one of my authors, got me hooked on. I don't know what I do, but I have to have my coffee.
I just lost my train of thought there because
Well, I tend to make people do that because I'm such a chatty Cathy that, if you get me started, I just am like that Energizer bunny. I just keep
you
going,
are.
going.
I've never met anyone with your level of energy. Well, maybe, but not many people to sustain it and and to give the level of energy that you do. And I want to just kind of let's go back to Bollywood. You've been
Yes,
isolated in your cabin
yes,
throughout the pandemic.
right.
It's been hard on everyone.
It's
And
been hard, and I was having a hard time seeing because evidently, when you get diabetes, the sugar crystals build up on your cornea. So I couldn't see at night at all. So I couldn't paint, I couldn't read, and I had to have something to do. And I, got on all the online streamings and I have seen every film. I mean, every film that I wanted to see. So I thought, well, I'll start watching foreign films. I remember years ago I watched Bride and Prejudice, which was a takeoff on Jane Austen, and I pulled up something, and I don't remember what the first film it was I watched. I wish I'd taken note, but I discovered this actor named Shah Rukh Khan. And when I go down these rabbit holes, I call this I was an art history minor. I start researching and I found out he's the biggest star in the world, film star in the world. And he makes more money than any film star. And I never even heard of him. And then I started watching his films. And it's the first time in my life that I ever started out with his television shows that he did when he was just a kid, really. And then he immediately became a Bollywood star. And I watched all of his films that I could get a hold of, clear up to the ones that are made today. And many of them are made here in the United States, Raw One and My Name is Khan and Zero were all, I think parts of them done here in the United States. And he's got like 15 coming up. But he is huge. And what else I loved about it, he's not a young man. He looks great. I mean, he's like 55 and I'm 64. So I was inspired by him. So there's a wonderful thing called YouTube. You get on it, and I started listening to his speech. He's done Yale Talks and TED Talks and gotten all these doctorates from all these colleges, and he's well educated. I mean, he has all these degrees in economics. And I just started watching these films. And then from there, I'd see another actor and I'd start watching their films. And then I started getting books. And I mean, one of the first books I got was Bollywood, and it was the films, the songs, and the stars. And I just started reading that. And then I ordered the only book I could find on him, which I was really upset that he doesn't have. He's working on a book, but he hasn't come out with it. But it's called King of Bollywood, Shah Rukh Khan in the Seductive World of India Cinema. And Anupama Chopra, who is a film critic in India, she's on Facebook. She wrote this book and she's done more interviews, and I watched all of them. And the more I watched, the more impressed I was, because he's married to a wonderful woman, who Gauri Khan, who is Hindi, and he is Indian, but he's Muslim. And what I love about their marriage and their children and their family is that he's another man that practices what he preaches. He started the Mir Foundation, which is helping all these women. He grew up in a family of women, but he lost his parents at a very young age. And the more I read, the more I wanted. And so I just have been, I've seen all of his films multiple times, and now I'm reading every book I can get my hand on anything to do with the history. I bought a book called The Taj Mahal, reading all about it. I just got in, since I talked to you about setting this up, a new book I'm really excited about, um, Jaipur City Palace, and it looks really exciting to me. On the Every part of India has different stories. I mean, there's so many different, there's over 500 different dialects. I've been trying to teach myself, I can do namaste and firmalinge and shukra. I can use some of the words I'm trying to learn the language. And honestly, I've watched so many of the films, I don't even need the subtitles anymore. I can't explain it, but it's osmosis. I don't understand the language, but I know Dil means heart. I know, G. I know, Mama G. I know what these things mean, and I can piece it all together by just they over, everything is done in a heightened sense of acting, and I get the storyline. I'm in love with it, and the storytelling of India. You know, I have to say, I was ignorant. I always thought the best storytellers in the world were Southerners, because my favorite writers have always been Southerners. They're Pat Conroy, they're Fannie Flagg, they're Ellen Gilchrist and Mark Childress and Michael Morris and Cassandra King and, Eudora Welty and Tennessee Williams. But then I discovered how ignorant I was, because once I started reading the stories, I just finished an Indian author that I discovered on another blogger. Her name's Anju Gatani. She lives in Atlanta, Georgia, but she's lived all over the world. And she's got a new series called The Winds of Fire, Duty and Desire, set in India. And it's a romance. And I've watched all these films, but I hadn't really read any books. This book is fantastic. It really helps you understand the culture, the arranged marriages, the patriarchy, how women are, we here in the United States, we think we're being held back. Oh, we need to go to some of these third world countries like Afghanistan or Pakistan or some of these. You cannot believe things that we just take simply for granted, going out of the house without a head covering, you know. But her book is fantastic. And she and I are talking almost, every other day now, because I fell in love with her books. And what's funny is she had over 500 rejections for this book. And she was on our meeting the other night, and she said, then out of the blue, you come along and you say, I'm going to make this a pick for 2022. And she goes, now I've got all four. She's got four books in this series, that one's coming out in June. She says they've been optioned for Netflix. And I'm going, she said, nobody knew what to do with it. And I said, well, that's because, before the internet and everything that's been going on, the world now, no matter where you live, you can learn about other people. And so as I travel in these Bollywood films and I go to the different cities, whether it's Jaipur or whether it's Calcutta or Mumbai or Bombay, whatever you want to call it, I'm learning that it's not, it's just like everybody thinks of the United States as New York or Dallas. You know, that it's and you have preconceived conceptions. And I know every author that would ever come to Jefferson, Texas, they go, "We're going to go buy a cowboy hat. We're going to go buy boots." And I go, "Well, we're actually more southern than that's West Texas, you know." So it's the more you read, the more you know. The more you know, the more you understand. The kinder, the more empathy, and it's so you starting this, Bollywood and books is going to open up a whole world of listening to people that are ready and willing to go to these places they've never dreamed they could go. And, I don't know when that's going to be, but in the meantime, let's read like crazy and learn
That's
as much as
right.
we can.
That's right. And the my I'll just say Bollywood and books was born of my travel and the difficulty of the travel, but I stretched myself. I wanted to test
Did you go
myself.
by yourself? That's what I want to know, Lovelace. Did you go by yourself?
That's going to be the first episode. How it all came
Really?
about. First episode to launch in just a few days, but this will be after the fact. And I'll cut this out of the recording. I asked the universe to just give me something to get me out of the rut that I was in at age 62. And the universe sent me an Englishman who challenged me. So, but this is your interview. I'm not going to go there. In any event, he was a wild camper. I was not a good Girl Scout. I tried, um, and he said, "You're not going to come to India." He invited me to meet him in India, and said, "You're not
You
going to
know,
come."
we read a book years ago about a woman whose best friend had fell in love with a man from India, and she said, "Go with me to India." It was called Cooking for Love, and it was a self-published book. People couldn't believe I picked a self-published book, and it was this romp about these two girls that go to India, and she meets him, and when she gets there, she finds out he's married. And what happens is that relationship doesn't so much work out, but the girl that goes with her meets someone. And it's just the best. It was the best book. And so I made it a pick. And the next thing you know, this self-publisher that helped publish her book took out a full page in the New York Times of Cooking for Love about this book and how the Pulpwood Queens had endorsed it and everybody should read it. As Sharon Bernstein was the author. It was absolutely, and this was a precursor to when I picked Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. Nobody had heard about this book, and then it went on to film fame with Julia Roberts, and they go to India, and I think little seeds were being planted, along the way. And then when I went back to college, I had a professor that was a doctor. She was a doctor before she became an art professor, and she was from India, Professor Guge. And I just admired her so much. I loved her art. She just, she was so tall. And that surprised me because I always think of Indian people as being small, but she's very tall and her husband's tall. And and after I got out of school, we became good friends. And I called her and I said, "Hey, what's your story?" She goes, "That is so funny you would ask me because I'm writing a book about my life and my story." And she just told me a bit and then she sent me some. It's going to be the best book. It will be a Pulpwood Queen book club because you just can't believe the story of how this woman came to the United States with her husband and they got their doctor's degrees in Detroit. And then they were brought to Henderson, Texas as rural doctors. You can, and they raised their two children, and now their son, I'm working with him on getting he's working on a series of books too. It's just all these little connections are made. And it's only because, I'm a reader, but that Bollywood seed was planted when I started reading these books. And then I had Abby as my professor. And I started watching these Bollywood films. And I mean, I just ordered two
And
more.
you're
I ordered a poetry book. I want to learn everything I can about this country. It fascinates me because they have literally turned their country around in the past 2 decades.
it's
They have
amazing.
really turned it around. It's amazing. Yeah.
Kathy, your willingness to embrace other cultures and to spread the word about that is so important. And in this year of COVID and our Zoom, our connections are global now.
That's
Our
right.
horizons have, if we take advantage of that, our horizons have really expanded. Yours certainly have. I mean,
Oh,
they,
yeah.
and it's thrilling to hear, first of all, your kindness that comes from the heart, your generosity, the way in which you wish to serve and to help people. You know, I'm I'm real big on generosity and service. That's
Well,
that's
that's
very
what
important.
we're here to be in community with one another. And we are here to serve each other, to lift our lives up, and to recognize too that this planet that we live in is not ours. This planet is for us to work with nature and the animals and everything to keep it a beautiful place to live, not destroy it. And so, that's why I like living with all the trees. I don't, people go, well, how often do you mow your yard? I don't have a yard. I have woods, and I have animals that go through every day, deer and armadillos and possums, and every once in a while a fox or a coyote, or one time I saw a bobcat. uh, Wild hogs have run through. I have two lots here, and I like that. I like that I'm living within nature, kind of like Tarzan. I mean, if this could be elevated like a tree house, I would be in heaven. But my grandson comes here. He's just 2, and he walks in, and loves he loves Bollywood. My daughter goes, well, you finally found somebody to watch the Bollywood films with you, because he loves them. And I've got him a little Aladdin's lamp, and we did the Aladdin book this time. And we've got a little tea set, and we do all this India stuff. And he doesn't know it yet, but I've ordered him a little boy's outfit from India. And so for Halloween, I'm gonna have to wear one of my saris, and he's gonna dress. And I'm so excited about it. And I'm always fearful in this politically correct climate that people will understand that I'm not trying to be culturally disappropriate. I wear these items of clothing to celebrate other cultures and other peoples. In fact, I'm getting ready to start a whole series of paintings that are Bollywood inspired, because the color, the Holi, the Diwali, the all the Festival of the Lights, the it's just, I love to see the beauty in the world. And if I could see some of those festivals,
I
that
think,
that'd be great.
Kathy, I think that the riot of color in India, you you would just how about you will adore.
I would love to go there. I would love, and people go, well, there's a lot of stuff that somebody said last night in the meeting, well, you haven't experienced anything till you experience one of the squatting, the way they go
that
to the
was
bathroom.
that was
Oh, what
me.
was that? That was you. Well, listen, I've already been through that in France, in Greece. I don't think I saw any of that when I was in Italy or England, but Greece, I had some really interesting moments. And but my grandfather, I used to ride with him in his pickup in the Flint Hills of Kansas, and we go check the oil pumping units, and there weren't any bathrooms. And you learned how to lean against the tailgate of the truck, you know. uh
I will
I
say Oh, I will say on a moving train, it's a challenge.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Just, but we won't go there. I'll try to keep this clean and neat. I there was I love nature too. I was not prepared for heat, and the
Well,
level of heat
that's
is
the one thing
difficult.
I'm trying to get some weight off, because if the thinner I am, the less I'm gonna be so hot, but I don't tolerate heat well. But I don't know how I can say that. You have no idea how hot it gets here in East Texas, and it's high, high humidity. In Houston, it's just like breathing water, um, because I go down there every once in a while and see authors and do events. But, you know, I prefer a mild, cool climate. But you know what? I want to see things too bad. I've got to go. I got to go. I'll just deal with it. And, on one hand, normally at home in paint clothes, my hair in a ponytail and a ball cap. But boy, do I look forward to these Zoom calls. And I know this is a podcast, but we're Zooming it too, videoing it. But I love to dress up for these events because I just cleaned out all my closets and I got rid of everything except my costumes. And so I was playing dress up, and people go, "You are so crazy." And I go, "Life is too short not to make it fun." You know,
Absolutely.
who makes up these rules that we have to look a certain way? I'm 64 and I feel like I'm just getting started. Honest to God. I finally got my college degree that I've been wanting ever since I was 17. I feel like, and when I was going to college, they go, "Who becomes an artist in their 60s?" I go, "Well, my friend Lethal Meacham didn't even become an author until her 70s. And she's battling pancreatic cancer and she just finished a book." I'm telling you, it's it's the mindset that you set for yourself. If you're going to think you're old, you're going to be old. I hung out with all those kids on campus. And the funniest story is my daughters came onto campus to find me one day. Well, they were on campus. And they saw one of the guys that's one of my studio near me working, and they said, "Do you know Kathy Murphy?" And he goes, "Cat?" He goes, "Yeah." And they kind of, and he goes, "Oh, she ran up to the library. She's up there right now." And they go, "Mom, who's this guy that you just," I said, "These kids, I swear to God, they were wonderful. They helped me get through college." And I work with youth group all my life. When you surround yourself with young people, you stay young. If you have to be careful that you don't get into that recliner